Hey, 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 hey. So listen, real quick, I'm gonna go in because they're gonna do a briefing. There was another mass shooting. This time it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, multi agency. I think 3 U.S. Marshals were unalived, and several other officers were injured. I know people are going to say Charlotte don't have anything to do with Memphis. That is so not true. Because if you remember U.S. Marshal, Tyree Marshall, his name wasn't Marshall. U.S. Tyrese Miller, the U.S. Marshal, he said it was multi-states. Operation North Star. There was another operation that they also created while on the North Star, and it's multi-states. So what it appears that's happening there are with these traffickings and drug and sex trafficking, they are attacking the laws when they come with these high-risk arrest warrants. Let's cut it up. Let's see what they have to say. It's a mass shooting. So multiple law enforcement officers shot. You know, you shoot.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Petrus. I'm a lieutenant with the Charlotte Metro Police Department here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I appreciate your patience this afternoon as we have worked through the situation that we've been dealing with today. There's no doubt that our Charlotte community has experienced a tragedy today. And it's one that, as a law enforcement community, we always know is possible, but we never expect. It never gets easier. We're going to do our best to answer your questions today, to provide details, to be transparent about the events of this afternoon. But I do implore you to understand that we're dealing with a tragic loss of life today. And that loss of life is very fresh. There's details that we do not know. There's questions that we frankly just aren't going to be able to answer. We will take your questions. But first, the Chief of Police for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Johnny Jennings, is going to come and give you some information and share his thoughts. I'll spell that for you. Johnny is Johnnny. Last name is Jennings, Jennings. After Chief Jennings, the mayor of the city of Charlotte, Vi Lyles, is going to come and share her thoughts. Vi, V-I, Lyles, L-Y-L-E-S. Chief.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Today's an absolute tragic day for the city of Charlotte and for the profession of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Today we lost some heroes that are out to just simply trying to keep our community safe. I'm going to try to go through a series of events of how this all occurred and played out, and then tell you a little bit more about the injuries and the things that we had to endure today as a profession and as a city. So about 1:30 p.m. this afternoon, the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force went to the 5000 block of Galway Avenue in an attempt to serve a warrant on an individual for possession of firearm by a convicted felon. When they approached that individual, they were met with gunfire. Officers returned gunfire and struck the victim, who was later pronounced deceased in the front yard of the residence. As officers approached that individual, they then received additional gunfire from inside of the residence. So after a long standoff, we were able to clear this residence and confirm that there were 2 additional people inside. They were both brought to the police station as persons of interest, and we're trying to determine now what exactly occurred inside of the residence. Tragically, there were 3 members of the U.S. Marshals Task Force who were pronounced deceased, and there were 4 CMPD officers who were shot, one being in critical condition who is now in the hospital fighting for his life. A total of 8 law enforcement officers were shot by the suspects in this house. So we are very early in the investigation. CMPD will lead this investigation. We still have a lot to uncover, a lot of questions that are not answered right now. So please respect the fact that I won't be able to answer some of the questions that you're going to have. But at the same time, we are going to diligently work on this to ensure that we bring a respect to these officers and these law enforcement officials that lost their lives today. And this is a good example of what we try to tell people every single day, that when we put on this uniform, that we don't have any guarantees that we'll return home. But yet we have a lot of great men and women across this entire country that do it every single day to make sure that you're safe in your communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Vialaus, who she wants to say a few words.
We do know that when people reach out to say this is something that is important that has happened, and they want to be a part of whatever we do, because there will be a time that we will commemorate these people that lost their lives. You think about it. Your father, your husband, your friend, your neighbor, all of them were one person like that. And today they're not going home. You know, 3 people lost their lives today. Honor and respect them for all the work that they've done, all the work that we will do to make it possible for our city to be safer.
Mayor, I want to take just a moment just to clarify. There was a total of 4 CMPD officers who were struck by gunfire today, and 4 task force officers. So that's a total of 8 law enforcement officers who were struck by gunfire today. I want to take a minute to. There was a total of 4 CMPD officers who were struck by gunfire today, and 4 task force officers. So that's a total of 8 law enforcement officers who were struck by gunfire today.
The death penalty.
So to recognize the people that are with me today, we have the Charlotte Fire Department, Medic, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, U.S. Marshals, Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office, North Carolina Highway Patrol, and I sure hope I didn't leave anybody off the list. But for on their behalf, I want to thank.
You mentioned that these marshals were serving a warrant for a convicted felon with a weapon. Yes. Knowing that they're going into a situation where they know that someone has a weapon, how does that change the way that they respond, if at all?
Well, it certainly changes the response. The question is, how does it change the response when you're going into a residence where someone has a history of having a weapon? And let me just be clear, the U.S. Marshal Service, their fugitive task force is comprised of surrounding agencies. So there are multiple agencies that are involved with the fugitive task force with the Marshal Service. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is a member of the U.S. Marshals Task Force as well. So anytime you are dealing with someone who is a convicted felon and who has been caught previously with a firearm, it does raise concerns and raise awareness when you are responding. So when they do that, part of the reason the task force is such an imperative part of what we do every single day is because they have extensive training and they train together to be able to deal with these kind of situations. It's always going to be something that's on the forefront.
This just happened in Orangemound, y'all.
When you're going after Charlotte's most dangerous people. And unfortunately today was something tragic that we never want to see. I never want to stand in front of you today to talk about an incident such something this tragic. It's really heartbreaking. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is a member of the U.S. Marshals Task Force as well. And unfortunately today was something tragic that we never want to see. I never want to stand in front of you about an incident such something this tragic. It's You know, I'm not ready to tell you all of the agencies. What I can confirm is that 4 CMPD officers were shot. 1 CMPD officer is in very critical condition at this point. We do have to make sure that family members and all of them are notified, so I'm not going to release which agencies they were with the task force. Yeah, so the question is how many other agencies are with the Fugitive Task Force or just responded? So the Fugitive Task Force, I don't have the exact numbers. With Charlotte has 1 member on the Fugitive Task Force as a sergeant.
So the other ones,
mainly the surrounding agencies within our surrounding cities and towns are members of that, and we can get you those numbers exactly who is involved.
Actually helped out responding to this, whether it was providing the fair care.
Yeah, these were on the scene with me, and state agencies. The Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office was there as well. We had agencies from Pineville to different towns within our county. They sent officers in to answer our calls for service because we obviously, you can imagine the manpower needs that it was to secure that scene and to do the transports. So they were very helpful to ensure that we did not let our citizens down in responding to those calls for service, and they were very helpful in that. So.